Well, it's that time again. The country's on fire, and we got to talk about Magic the Gathering. Spoiler season for Aether Drift is in full swing, and as we are preparing to get our races started on Avishkar, I still actually prefer the word Kaladesh. I know the racial implications to it were kind of meh, but like, that's the one that I had, so I definitely like it. It'd be like changing Ravnica. I don't know. I understand why it was changed, and it doesn't actually change much at all for any of us. And at least there was a lore reason, right? The nobles definitely wanted to keep the original name, and they failed during the Phyrexian invasion, so the workers rose up, and I'm a socialist, so I guess I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for stories like that. But regardless, there is a Mario Kart race happening on that plane filled with blue shells and all kinds of shenanigans. And there is a commander who showed up in the middle of all of that who, well, me and a few of my friends actually had some disagreements on. You see, this is Aatchik, Emerald Radiant, and I say that we had some disagreements on because I think this guy is a fantastic combo commander, whereas they felt he was a slow, dirtily bad replacement for any other Golgari Aristocrats commander. Now, I think that actually they're correct and I'm correct, but the conversation that we had basically boiled down to, it doesn't matter how strong of a combo piece this thing is, that doesn't make up for the fact that it's just a bad, slow aristocrat commander. And I wanted to build this deck to go ahead and showcase that that's not necessarily the case. I think we can build a $15 Aatchik combo deck that is very easy to interact with. All you need is graveyard removal, and the deck will slow down. It won't stop the deck, but it will slow down the deck enough to where you can get your bearings and fight it. At least that's the hope. So this should be one of the few instances of a fair, but still very powerful, combo deck. Let's go ahead and get right into things. Aatchik is a green 2 black and 3/3/3 commander who gives you a 1/1 green insect for every artifact and creature in your graveyard. And of course, whenever an insect you control dies, you get a 1/1 counter on Aatchik, and every opponent will lose 1 life. Now, the first thought with a commander like this is obviously aristocrats, right? It's sacrificing insect tokens, making sure that there are ways of getting them in the graveyard, on the battlefield, thrown into the trash pile over and over again. That sounds like aristocrats, but what we are going to be building today is a combo deck with an aristocrats sub-theme. Let me explain. You see, when Aatchik comes out, it spawns all the insects, and then it will burn everybody for the amount of damage that is there. Now, if we can make sure that Aatchik's ability happens multiple times in a turn, or we have our graveyard filled enough, we should be able to burn our opponent's life points down to 0. And in the event that an opponent is a life gain deck and this strategy won't work on them, Aatchik does give himself 1/1 counters, so he should be able to use commander damage to get in there and annihilate the final player. To make this strategy work, we need Aatchik to work the turn he comes out, and we need him to be able to work multiple times in that turn. And at our budget, while we would like to use cards like, say, Strionic Resonator to make that work, we don't have that kind of budget available to us, so instead we're going to rely on reanimation effects that happen instantaneously. All of these cards are effectively the same: Supernatural Stamina, Feign Death, Undying Malice, and Not Dead After All. Each of these will give our commander the ability to come back from the graveyard to the battlefield and immediately give us extra insects again. And we have a single Vat of Rebirth in here as a bit of staying power. If we happen to do our combo once and we don't kill everybody, maybe we need to be able to do it again on a following turn, and Vat of Rebirth will allow us to get there. Now, this does create another problem for us. We need to be able to sacrifice creatures for Aatchik to be able to do his thing. And to that end, we are going to be supplementing the other half of our combo with 8 sacrifice outlets. All but one are creatures. This deck is running 41 creatures and 11 artifacts. So more than half of our deck is being dedicated to pieces that will operate for our commander's combo. The other ones being the instance we have to run to make the deck work, a couple of sorceries, and a few enchantments like Evolutionary Leap. Evolutionary Leap lets us sack a creature and reveal cards on the top of our deck till we hit a creature and put it in our hand. This allows us to burn through any chaff and immediately get to live cards that ideally should supplement our combo. This will let us dig for a free sack outlet like Vampire Aristocrat. Alternatively, this can also let us dig for things like Timeless Witness and such so that we can get combo pieces back. Our other sack outlets will be Vampire Aristocrat, Bloodflow Connoisseur, Drawshopper, Bloodthorn Vampire, Falconwrath Torturer, Phyrexian Ghoul, and Dimir Houseguard. And the reason I'm not going over the effects of these cards is the only relevant text on any of these is the ability to sacrifice a creature as a cost at instant speed. Sacrificing a creature as a cost means we always get priority on the stack, meaning that we can respond to almost anything and just win games outright, irrespective of what our opponents try to do. That's what we're trying to aim for with this ability, with this particular combo. If pieces of our combo go away and we need them back, then we will use Golgari Findbroker and Timeless Witness to grab those important game pieces back for us. When these enter the battlefield, they give us the ability to get cards back from our graveyard. Findbroker grabs permanents, and Timeless Witness grabs any card whatsoever, and this one can be used from the graveyard with its Eternalize ability if it gets milled out with one of our other strategies. The other half of the strategy that may end up causing us to lose important cards is the self-mill portion of the deck. We need to make sure that all of our creatures and artifacts make their way into the graveyard as fast as possible, so we are going to be running a lot of ways to mill ourselves out. Bitter Revelation lets us look at the top 4 cards of our library and put 2 of them in our hand, and the rest go into the graveyard. Glowspore Shaman enters the battlefield milling us 3 cards, and then lets us put a land on top of our library if we haven't quite sequenced up to our commander's cost. Relentless Pursuit lets us reveal the top 4 of our library, grab a creature and a land from among them, and put them into our hand. The rest go to the graveyard. Eerie Soul Tender enters the battlefield, milling us 3 cards, and we can exile it from the graveyard to give us even more recursion from our grave. Grisly Salvage lets us reveal the top 5, grab a creature or land, and throw the rest in the grave. Satyr Wayfinder allows us to get a land from the top 4 and throw the rest into the grave. Acolyte of Affliction enters the battlefield, milling 2 cards, and then we can put any permanent from our grave into our hand. Mulch lets us reveal the top 4 and put all lands revealed into our hand, the rest go into the grave. Undead Butler enters the battlefield, mills 3 cards, and if it dies, we can return any creature from our graveyard to our hand. Malevolent Rumble reveals the top 4, we grab a permanent from among them, put it in our hand, and the rest go into the graveyard. We then make an Eldrazi spawn, which ramps us. Shigeki Jukai Visionary allows us to return him to our hand in order to reveal the top 4 of our library and ramp with one of those lands and throw the rest into the grave. Stitcher Supplier lets us mill 3 when it comes onto the battlefield or dies, and the Coup de Grace Old Stick Fingers. When we cast this spell, that means it's a cast trigger. That means counterspelling doesn't work very well on this one. But anyway, Old Stick Fingers, when we cast this spell, reveal cards on the top of our library until we reveal X creature cards. Put all creature cards revealed this way into our graveyard, and the rest go to the bottom of the library. Old Stick Fingers' power and toughness are each equal to the number of creature cards in our graveyard. And that does mean that he can just kind of turn sideways and kill opponents, but the real reason he's here is to fill our grave for our commander. We're also going to add in some secondary win cons to the deck. Sir Conrad the Grim allows us to burn our opponents for 1 every time a creature dies or is put into a graveyard from anywhere. This will extend the combo for our commander while also just being a fantastic win con in his own right. Dreadhound works very similarly, letting us mill 3 cards, and also has the same kind of ability as Sir Conrad, though a little weaker. Every opponent loses 1 life when we mill or if a creature dies. Then we have Izani Thousand-Eyed, which can be used as a great draw engine and makes a bunch of black and green insect tokens for herself. This, again, like with Conrad and Dreadhound, extends one part of our commander's ability a little further and gives us options to get the benefits of our commander's ability even when we can't summon our commander for a variety of reasons. Costing too much mana, draineth Magistrate, you name it. Now that you've seen every piece of the combo, let's go ahead and quickly go over how this is going to work. Here's a quick example of us being about midway through a game. It says turn 1, but that's not really the turn that we're on in this example. Our graveyard currently has 11 creatures in it. So when we pay all but 1 mana, in this example we've only got 7 mana available, we pay all but 1 mana and we get our commander on the board. That allows us to spawn 11 insects, as there are 11 creatures and or artifacts in our grave. After spawning all of the insects, we will then use Vampire Aristocrat to sacrifice all of the insects instantaneously. This will burn our opponents for 11 life. Then we will tap our swamp and give our commander supernatural stamina, allowing us to sacrifice him and pull him right back, spawning all of those insect tokens once more. Once all the insect tokens are on the board, we will sacrifice them again for another 11 damage. Now, in this scenario, we dealt 22 to the entire board in one fell swoop. If we're midway through a game and people have been taking damage throughout that game, this should be able to account for what their life is at that moment. And again, if there's a life gain player on the table, then we're just going to turn our commander sideways at that player for Voltron damage, as he will gain a bunch of 1/1 counters for us doing that particular strategy. It should be noted, though, that this is a scenario with only 11 creatures in the grave. The deck can get to more creatures if we are using cards like this Evolutionary Leap to dig through and discard our creatures away. Now that you've seen how the loop itself is going to work, let's go ahead and dig into the rest of the deck so we can see how we're going to get our important pieces to our hand. While a lot of our self-mill does have the ability to add cards to our hand, which makes it pseudo-draw, we do still want good, honest-to-God draw power in our deck. So, let's go ahead and begin with Fidea Seer. This lets us draw a card and reveal it, and if it's not a land, we discard it. Good news for us, half the cards in our deck that aren't lands are cards that work towards our commander's abilities, so this will allow us to keep land drops consistent while also filling our grave. Polygraph Orb enters the battlefield and lets us look at the top 4 cards of our library, put 2 into our hand, and the rest in our graveyard. It does have a collect evidence ability that we are going to try not to use that often, but if this card ends up being blown up by an opponent, say Vandal Blast, then it will also count towards our numbers. Morbid Opportunist draws us a card whenever a creature is destroyed. Grim Haruspex does the same thing, but only for our non-token creatures. Midnight Reaper does the same thing, but for our non-token creatures. Harvester of Soul draws us a card whenever any non-token creature dies at all. Erebos the Blackheartist lets us draw a card anytime a creature dies, as long as we pay 2 life. And Hostile Negotiations lets us look at the top 3 cards of our library twice. Put 1 in a face-down pile, 1 in a face-up pile, and hand them to an opponent and ask them which door do they want to open. Many times you can use this to engage in psychological warfare with your table, putting crap cards in the face-up pile and good cards in the face-down pile, so that people start questioning whether or not you have cards that you want. And since we do have a lot of cards that get cards from our graveyard back to our hand, sometimes throwing things into our grave is just throwing it into our hand, but, you know, hand number 2. And that does it for the deck's draw engines. Between these and the mill engine, we should be able to dig through our deck at a very, very good pace, but we do still need to make sure that our opponents are not able to win the game. And to do that, we need to remove their threats from the board. So let's talk about doing just that. We're going to be running 10 cards of targeted removal and 2 cards for board wipes. Lower numbers than I would like, but we are a combo deck, so we are just using these to disrupt our opponents. We also want to make sure that with very few exceptions, our cards need to be dedicated solely to removing cards while also being artifacts or creatures so our commander can see them. And it turns out there is one card above all else that is an artifact and a creature that gets rid of any problematic thing on the board. It is Meteor Golem. Meteor Golem blows up any non-land permanent, and our deck is a very high ramp deck, so we do have the ability to get this guy out pretty consistently. Another artifact that blows up things on the board is Executioner's Capsule. This blows up any non-black creature. For creatures that blow up things, we've got a Cursed Marauder to make everybody sacrifice their creatures, Outland Liberator to blow up artifacts and enchantments. We have Canker Bloom to do the same thing, Insidious Fungus, which can do that, as well as ramp for us, Plaguecrafter to make everybody sack their things, and Rankle, Master of Pranks, to make everybody discard cards, draw cards, sack creatures, you name it. He does everything we want in a deck like this. We also have 2 cards that do not work towards our deck's main strategy, but have very good alternate abilities. Death Sprout blows up any creature and then lets us ramp. We do have a beefy commander we need to get to, so this is fantastic. And Binding of the Old Gods blows up any non-land permanent and then also lets us ramp. And notably, it lets us ramp by getting a forest out of our deck, which means we can grab a dual land out of our deck. It can also give our creatures Death Touch until end of turn, but that's not really going to be super necessary in most of our games. For our board wipes, we are going to be running an Oblivion Stone to get rid of all problematic cards on the board all at once, and also to be a artifact in our grave that works to supplement our commander. We'll also run a Necromantic Selection, as this can be a reset button for our commander. After we've done our sack outlet triggers and we've gotten rid of everything that we have access to, instead of sacking our commander to reset him, sometimes we can use Necromantic Selection to get rid of all problematic creatures on the board, put our commander back on the board, and get an instant board state state of 1/1 insects. We can then use those insects to either attack an opponent, or alternatively, if we have another sack outlet in our hand, we can just start all the dumb shenanigans all over again. Ideally, these should be plenty of ways to disrupt what our opponents are trying to do, but we do need to get to our own game plan as fast as possible. So, let's talk about ramping. We've got 11 cards dedicated solely to ramping for us, and all of them run the gamut of creature or artifact, which means we should be able to operate pretty consistently for our commander's ability. Let's go ahead and get one really notable card out of the way. This is Unstable Obelisk. I really don't understand why people don't like this card. I guess it's because it's a 3-mana mana rock, but as a 3-mana mana rock that works towards our commander's ability, so if we mill it, we get more power. It's also just a really great way to get rid of any problematic permanent, including a land. It's just a really great card. More people should use this. Burnished Heart is another card that's been kind of forgotten by the community in recent years, but for a deck like this, it works out perfectly. Getting 2 basic lands from your deck for the cost of 6 mana is a lot, but it is an artifact creature, so it works for our deck strategy very well. Beanstalk Giant can grab any land from, or any basic land from our deck and put it onto the battlefield untapped, which is already good, but the fact that it's a creature that if we mill, we actually don't suffer from is also fantastic. Dawn Treader Elk can work alongside Wayfarer's Bauble to get us early game basic lands, and then because they sacrifice themselves, they of course work towards our commander's ability. Farhaven Elf and Wood Elves can grab a land from our deck whenever they come onto the battlefield, and Wood Elves, specially noted, gets a forest out, meaning we can use this to get dual lands out of the deck. Springbloom Druid can be used to sacrifice a land, and then search our library for 2 basic lands and put them on the battlefield. Any card that gets 2 basic lands is automatically better than one that does not in a deck like this, because when we mill our cards, we do want to thin our deck out enough to make sure that all of those mills are live. Sad Robot also is wonderful in here, as Sad Robot can be a great source of draw and ramp, and it's an artifact creature. Then we have Talisman of Resilience and Golgari Signet. Now, normally, I would not run these in a green deck. I mean, why would you? You have access to Land Ram, which is the safest kind of ramp in Magic the Gathering, but the Signets do a wonderful job in this deck on account that they are artifacts that if we mill them, we do not suffer, whereas if we were using, say, Rampant Growth, which I do prefer, then we would be suffering when we milled those cards because they wouldn't work towards our commander's ability. For lands, we're going to run 11 forests and 12 swamps. We're also going to have the dual lands of Command Tower, Tainted Wood, Necroblossom Snarl, Haunted Mire, Exotic Orchard, Viridescent Bog, and Golgari Rot Farm. The Rot Farm works here really well because we are trying to reset utility lands later in the game, and Haunted Mire is a forest, which can be grabbed with Wood Elves and Binding the Old Gods. We'll also have the fetching lands Escape, Tunnel, Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds. They're all basically the same card. They sack themselves and get a land from our deck, but we also have Blighted Woodland and Myriad Landscape. As I mentioned before, anything that can yank 2 lands out of our deck is welcome here if it does not work against any of the deck's other things. Like, if I was running Explosive Vegetation, for instance, I would get 2 lands out of the deck, but I would also be putting a non-live card in the graveyard that is taking up a slot of something else. Myriad Landscape and Blighted Woodland, on the other hand, aren't taking up slots for anything else, as they are just other lands. Utility lands, we are running a Volatile Fault to get rid of problematic lands, and we are running a Pit of Offerings so that we can get rid of problematic cards in our opponent's graveyards. Though, of course, as your budget for the deck increases, you can add more utility lands in these spots. And that does it for everything in the deck, so now all that's left to do is to talk about how to play the damn thing. Let's go ahead and talk capable hands. I think 2 or 3 lands is plenty for this deck, so long as you have a way to throw things to the graveyard and start digging up your resources, as that will give you additional lands while working towards the deck's battle plan. This hand happens to have 3 lands and a Fadaya Seer, and Fadaya Seer happens to be one of the most important cards we can get early game. So let's go ahead and keep this hand, even though it's only got ramp in the form of Binding the Old Gods. It has one of our combo pieces with Not Dead After All, and an extender with Dreadhound, so this may actually be perfectly keepable. Let's go ahead and draw our first card, and it's a Wayfarer's Bauble. Now, normally, I would say we play the Wayfarer's Bauble ASAP, but I want to get this tapped land out of the way, so we're just going to go ahead and wait on it. Next card is a Burnished Heart. Let's go ahead and pay 1, 2. Let's get the Fadaya Seer out there, so that on turn 3, when we draw the Evolutionary Leap, we can just tap the Fadaya Seer. Look at our top card. It's a land. We get to draw it. Let's play that land, and let's pay 1, 2, 3. Let's play and crack the Wayfarer's Bauble and go ahead and ramp up. We move into turn 4, and we've drawn another forest. Let's go ahead and tap the Fidaya Seer. Top card is a land. We get to go ahead and keep it, and we can play a land. Tap 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's use Binding the Old Gods to get rid of a problematic card on an opponent's board. Now we can move into our next turn, and the Binding the Old Gods is going to go into our deck and grab us a forest. We already have our Haunted Mire right now, so we have to go ahead and just get a regular forest out of the deck. Not ideal, but also not the worst thing in the world. Let's tap the Seer. Top card of the deck is another land, somehow. I don't know why it keeps doing this to me. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lands available. We could play the Escape Tunnel, but I think the correct move is the Viridescent Bog. We need to get lands out of this deck now. Burnished Heart needs to go onto the battlefield and go into the deck and grab us 2 lands. We move on to the next turn, and we've drawn a Satyr Wayfinder. Let's go ahead and do our traditional start off with Fidaya Seer. We draw the Necromantic selection. It automatically goes to the grave. Not a great one to lose, but not the worst in the world either. Let's play Satyr Wayfinder, and let's look at the top cards of our deck. We have 1 land, 2 land, 3 land, 4 land. What? I don't even know what's happening right now. Why is it giving me so many lands? There's only 37 in the deck. All right, well, I guess we do our land per turn as Myriad Landscape, since we can use that to get rid of some lands later. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know what? Screw it. Let's just go ahead and play the Dreadhound, right? We have a way to protect him with our Not Dead after all. So Dreadhound is out. We mill 1, 2, 3. We milled all lands! How are we milling all lands? What the hell is going on? We go to our next turn, and there's a Springbloom Druid. This deck will have no lands by the time I'm done with this turn. Screw it, I'm done. We're playing Escape Tunnel. We're cracking the Escape Tunnel. We're tapping the Myriad Landscape along with 2 other lands. We're cracking it, and we're paying 1, 2, 3, and we're playing the Springbloom Druid, sacrificing this forest. We are grabbing all the lands. We've yanked 5 more lands out of the deck. I swear to Fark, if the Fidaya Seer finds another land when we tap it... Okay, thank God, it's an old Stick Fingers. It goes to the grave. That's fine. Now we're going to pay 1, 2 to get Evolutionary Leap onto the battlefield, and that's going to be it. Our opponent's turn comes up. We're going to pay 1, sacrifice our Springbloom Druid to go until we hit a creature. It's the Grim Haruspex. Cool. That's fine. That's okay. We'll pay 1 more mana to get rid of the Satyr Wayfinder to go until we hit a creature. It's the Bloodthirsty Vampire. That's also fine. I'm okay with that. We draw a card. It's Malevolent Rumble. Let's play a land for turn. We're on turn 8. We should be able to do the combo right now. Fidaya Seer. What's our top card? Sweet. It's an Eerie Soul Tender. We can use that to get a creature back in a minute. That's fine. Let's go ahead and pay 1, 2, Malevolent Rumble. Let's look at the top 4 cards of our library. 1, 2, 3, 4. We get to put a permanent card from among them into our hand. I think we get the Exotic Orchard, so we can throw all of these. Actually, no. We get the Vat of Rebirth. It lowers the damage count from our commander down, but that's perfectly fine, honestly. We're then going to pay 1 mana to play the Vat of Rebirth. That's out and available for us now. We also have the Eldrazi Spawn we get to use. We don't have any other ways of milling ourselves out right now, so what we're going to do is we are going to... Hold on, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 11 mana available right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with the Eldrazi Spawn. Aatchik is out. Let's go ahead and see what he has. Aatchik sees 7 creatures in the graveyard. That is not a lot, but I think we still win right here. 7 creatures and artifacts in the grave combined that's going to be 14 damage now. So when we summon, we go 1, 2, 3, and we summon, or no, just 2. We just have to use 2. But let's go ahead and get that up. We play the Bloodsworn Vampire. Let's go ahead and sacrifice all of these, and our opponents are going to burn for 14 because of our Aatchik and our Dreadhound. That burns them for 14, and that puts 7 counters on the Vat of Rebirth. Now, let's go ahead and sacrifice Aatchik, burning our opponents for 1, so they've taken 15 damage so far, and we'll tap Vat of Rebirth, to go ahead and use the oil counters on it to revive Aatchik, and that is going to spawn 7 insect tokens again. That means we can sack the 7 insect tokens to deal 14 more damage. That means our opponents have taken 29 damage so far. Let's tap the Haunted Mire, and let's go ahead and play Not Dead After All onto Aatchik. Aatchik, now if it dies, will revive automatically. So we sack Aatchik to deal 1 damage thanks to the Dreadhound, and that will cause our opponents to burn for their 30th damage. Altogether, we've done 90 damage so far. Then Aatchik will auto-revive, which will summon our insect tokens again. We have 7 insect tokens, and we use our Bloodsworn Vampire to sacrifice all 7 of those tokens. 44 damage has been done to our opponents. We got there through all the frustration. Somehow, we've dealt 132 damage to our opponents thanks to abusing this combo. Now, there may be ways to make this combo go infinite, but as far as I'm concerned, this is enough right here. This got us there, even though I had to fight super hard with the deck to get it to do what I wanted it to do. It still got us there in the end. So what do you do if you've got a little bit of extra money that you want to upgrade this precarious combo package? If you're looking to upgrade this deck, there's a lot of avenues you can go through. Woe Strider's a great sack outlet that normally would be perfectly within our budget, but we were barely scraping by at the end there with the budget that I had. So Woe Strider's great because you can bring it back from the graveyard after self-milling it. Speaking of bringing it back from the graveyard, Dread Return can also do a lot of work bringing other cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, while also sacking insects to extend your combos. Rise of the Witch King can also be great for getting important permanents back from the graveyard to the battlefield. Sakura Tribe Elder is a great ramp piece that can be used while also filling up your graveyard with creatures. Doom Whisperer can be used to just completely fill your grave with everything you need all at once. World Shaper can take all of your lands you've thrown into the graveyard throughout the game and get a giant bit of ramp from them. Skull Prophet can be ramp that also can be used to throw cards from your grave to your from your library to your graveyard. Blossoming Tortoise is great mill while also being ramp. Ripples of Undeath is repeated mill that can also put things from your grave to your hand as you need. MDFCs are always great as well. Fell the Profane being a land on one side, being able to remove problematic cards from the board, with Balaged Recovery being another way to get really good cards back from your graveyard to the battlefield, and Malakir Rebirth being one of the important cards for the deck's combo to function, being able to add one more card that makes the deck's combo work while also being just a land on the backside is fantastic. Speaking of the deck's combo, we can mill ourselves a lot using Breach the Multiverse. This will also give us an instant board state to threaten our opponents, which our opponents then have to deal with. And we have Bolas's Citadel we can use to make sure that we have a strong board state early on. Ramp up to the Citadel, play it down, and opponents will believe that this is the thing that's going to kill them. And it can actually burn our opponents to death by letting us sacrifice 10 non-land permanents, like say 10 of our insects, to make every opponent lose 10 life on top of the 10 our commander will burn from them. Aftermath Analyst enters the battlefield milling 3 cards, and it can also be used to get all lands from our graveyard back to the battlefield. Out of the Tombs can be used to make sure that our graveyard is nice and full all game. Yawgmoth Thran Physician is probably one of the best sack outlets in the game that can be used to draw us into combo pieces while also extending our combo itself. And Vampiric Tutor can be used to get any type of, or really any tutor. If you're going to build this deck and you're going to go full-on combo-centric, then tutors are probably something you want to go for anyway. I don't like tutors, so I try not to run them or just run very inflexible ones when I do. But if you do have one, then a Vampiric Tutor will do a lot of work in making sure you have your important game pieces. And Altar of Dementia, this is probably one of the first cards I would go for, honestly. It's an artifact while also being a sack outlet. That's great, but the fact that it can mill ourselves early in the game, getting our graveyard nice and filled, is just fantastic. And that's really everything there is to know about my version of this deck. It is a sacrifice combo, one turn matters, everybody dies style of deck. Not everybody is here for that kind of deck. I know that while I know how to build that kind of deck, I really don't like playing that kind of deck that much, but if you are a combo player at heart, and this is the kind of thing you enjoy doing, then hopefully this deck will speak to you. That all said, thank you all for watching my videos. Hopefully those of you who were over at MagFest had a great time. I had a great time on my panel there talking about whether Sonic was still good or was good again. I think it was a fantastic freaking time. That said, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you want to support my work and what I do, there is a Patreon link down below. There's also a playmat you can pick up to support the channel down there. And as always, everybody, if you've got a deck you want me to cover, let me know in the comment section below. Insert end of video tagline here. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Agamotto, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fire Shard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.